When you think about endings on the Nintendo Entertainment System, you probably don't picture blood, brain matter, and a strong political message. You think of Mario rescuing the princess, Mega Man walking home after a long battle, and Japanese developers struggling with English localization. But that wasn't the case with Bionic Commando, which has one of the most gruesome endings you'll ever see on an 8-bit console. Now is the time to look away if you don't want to know what happens next, because today we're going to be comparing the endings of 3 different Bionic Commando games. This is 23 Endings, the early years. Launched in arcades back in 1987, Bionic Commando was initially sold as the follow-up to the overhead shoot-'em-up Commando. You took control of Super Joe as he parachuted behind enemy lines and used his grappling hook to infiltrate the enemy base and foil the army's plot to launch a missile. We don't get a lot of details setting this up, we just know that it takes place a decade or so after an unspecified world war and requires a hero with a special set of skills. This arcade game is short and only features 4 brief levels. We start out in a forest flooded with guards. This makes way to an enemy outpost, followed by an underground base, and it all leads up to the final confrontation with this giant computer, which leads into a frantic race to escape the compound in one piece. Here's what happens if you've done all that correctly. Okay, so it's not the world's most satisfying ending, but it reminds us that we're simply playing a small part in a larger war. It leaves it open-ended and encourages us to restart the game from the beginning to earn a higher score. In other words, it's an arcade game from the mid-1980s. This is what you get. Now, when it comes to the 1988 NES port, you can just go ahead and forget all that stuff I said about the arcade story. Capcom decided to completely retool the home version, giving us brand new characters and a completely different story. This time around, we find Super Joe captured after attempting to infiltrate Generalissimo's base in order to uncover a top-secret project known as Albatross. Now it's up to Nathan, Ladd, Spencer to swoop in and not only save Super Joe, but figure out what that evil NAS group is planning. Long story short, Spencer fights through all kinds of stages to eventually infiltrate the NAS base. It's here that he discovers that Generalissimo Killed has been keeping a brutal dictator named Master D preserved in some sort of liquid, and has been trying to bring him back to life. Now, here's where things start to get interesting. Remember how the instruction manual calls the group the NAS? Well, Master D looks an awful lot like a certain dictator that died on April 30th, 1945. In fact, the likeness is so obvious that Capcom felt the need to change the group's name from NAS to BAD inside the game. No matter what you call the evil army, it's pretty clear that this is Hitler. So Spencer gets there just in time to see Generalissimo Killed resurrect Hitler, Master D. We also learn that the top-secret Albatross weapon has come online, and yeah, our hero is going to need to take it down. This leads to a chance meeting with a fellow Federation soldier that has a bazooka just waiting for Spencer. The mission now is to jump towards the chopper, line up the shot, and then kill both Generalissimo Killed and Hitler before they escape. Here's how that works out. Now, with Naz's leadership killed, it's up to Spencer to find his way out of the base before the whole thing blows up. Here's what happens next. While everybody is excited that Spencer saved the day and rescued Super Joe, I just want to go back to the moment when he blew up Hitler's head. It goes by so quickly, but it's easily one of the most gruesome endings I've ever seen on the Nintendo Entertainment System. It's so much that I'm a little surprised that it got past Nintendo's strict guidelines. Throw in the Hitler and Nazi stuff, and it makes me wonder if anybody at Nintendo even bothered to make it to the end. But I did, and this iconic ending has stuck with me for close to 30 years. Now, 4 years after NES owners fell in love with shooting Hitler in the face, Capcom decided to port the game to the handheld Game Boy. Instead of completely retooling the game, as they did going from the arcade to the NES, the developers simply changed the year, localization, and changed some of the names. For example, Lad Spencer became Rad Spencer, and Generalissimo Kilt's name has been changed back to Director Wiseman, a reference to the original Famicom version. This brand new black and white Bionic Commando also found itself set in the future, giving Capcom the incentive to update some of the visuals and add more spiky hair. But it's not the setting or the hairstyles you're probably interested in, so let's just jump to the end and see if the blood and guts remain. Yeah, as you can see, Capcom ditched 8-bit Hitler. Sadly, they also got rid of the gory head explosion, opting instead for a bunch of science fiction nonsense that isn't nearly as exciting or iconic as the NES game. That said, I do like the animation on the exploding ship and some of the shots that they have after it. This black and white ending isn't as memorable, but it's appropriately satisfying and pretty good for a Game Boy game. Now, let's talk about how Red Spencer's wife ends up being locked away inside his bionic arm in the new game. Yeah, on second thought, let's not. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of 23 Endings, the early years. So here's the question of the day. What's your favorite version of Bionic Commando? This is probably a boring answer, but that recent 2D remake was pretty damn great, and I even enjoyed the sequel. But hey, maybe you prefer the originals, or possibly even that controversial 3D reboot. Let me hear your thoughts in the comments below. We're down to the final 9 episodes of 23 Endings, so tune in tomorrow for a look at Super Mario Bros. 2, followed by Street Fighter and one of my favorite shoot-'em-ups of all time. We have some huge episodes coming up, so do me a favor and click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.